Hello, everybody, and thank you once again for tuning in to another episode of Outside the Box. I'm super excited today, so I have to kind of keep my nerves in check a little bit so that I can get through this without fumbling it. But because I have a very special guest that I'm really excited to talk about his book today, which I'll get to in a minute. So before I get into my guest and his book and what we're going to be discussing today, I want to remind you guys that if you don't know me, my name is Sage the Coach, also known as Stephanie K. I am a Christian author and certified life and relationship coach. And my show Outside the Box usually airs on Saturdays at 12 p.m., where I aim to help people see that God is bigger than their boxes. Because again, it's so many times that we miss God or we get discouraged in whatever we're doing or what we're going through because we're not able to understand where God is in that. And so if we can learn to see God outside of the boxes that we usually put him in a variety of different situations and life struggles, then it helps us to get through those things a little bit easier, to grow our relationship with God, to grow ourselves and the whole gambit. And so, but also in addition to my show on Saturdays at 12 p.m., I have added 2 new segments. Tuesday, I have started something called Testimony Tuesdays. I did the first one last week where I interview different people just about their testimonies. And so those are about 30 minutes. They come on at 12 p.m. If you're interested in sharing your own testimony, please reach out and we'll schedule that and get that going. And so make sure you tune into that because if you guys watch my show on Christmas and New Year's, I did a lot of small stories about people's biggest life lessons of 2021. And I really enjoyed it. I always had the idea to do testimonies because I've always loved testimonies. And so I decided to go ahead and work that into the regular layout for the show. So that will be on Tuesdays at 12 p.m. And then the next one that I have coming up last week, I interviewed a lady and her husband, Maya and Ryan Tither. And so last week was Maya's testimony. And this next one coming up on Tuesday is Ryan's. They both have powerful testimonies. So please be sure you tune into that. The other thing that I've added on Thursdays is About My Father's Business Thursdays. And those are also 30-minute segments that come on at 5 p.m. And you can see a Christian business. I highlight a Christian business. So again, if you have a Christian business, product, or service, you can also sign up for that. In my information, you can contact me through my website or my Facebook profile or any social media thing that you might be watching me on. And I can give you the information for that. If you have a business also that you want me to highlight. So we just talk about different Christian businesses and things like that. Also be sure to like, share, and invite people to my page. I'm trying to get these stories out there to encourage people, to help them grow spiritually and understand God a little bit better, because this Christian walk can be very confusing and difficult. And so we all need a little bit of help, and God understands that. But people won't be able to get that help from what I'm offering if they don't know that I exist. So I need you guys to share my page, invite people to my page. The easiest thing to do is to go under the community tab on my page. If you scroll down, you will see an invite button where you can invite several people from your list who you think might need this information or be interested in it. So please do that. So without further ado, I want to go into the topic that we have for today, which is overcoming porn addiction. I have been wanting to do this topic for a while. If you've been watching my show, I really like to not only help people to see that God is outside their box, but in order to do that, I like to do stories that are not typical kind of Christian stories. I want people to see God, how he operates in a variety of areas. And a lot of times in areas that we might feel distant from God or judged or depressed. I've done a show of depression, addiction, seeing God in the midst of grief and loss, parenting, all types of things. So I want you guys to really get a good handle on God, even, in situations that you might think that would be the last place that God would be. And so I've been wanting to do this show for that reason. And this show today is going to be, of course, overcoming porn addiction. And so I ran into Jay Burrows, who was my guest today, in a Facebook Christian group, and he had just published a book, and I saw it, and I was like, wow, this is what I've been wanting to do for some time. And so I reached out to him. We scheduled something, we got it going. Now, I had not read his book yet, so I just wanted to do the topic, and I jumped on the opportunity. But I read his book, and oh my goodness, it's like I was so blessed by it. I love the book so much. I've never had a particular myself a struggle with that. But this book is not just about that. And so this book really highlights all of that. I mean, it really gets down in the dirt about what is really going on in our spirits, how we get exposed to stuff, how we carry it throughout our lives, the process that it takes to go through it with God and get past it. Like, oh my goodness, I cannot tell you how much I love this book. But without further ado, I will bring out the author, and he's also a screenwriter, Jay Burrows. So hello.
How are you?
I'm fine. How you doing?
Very well, very well.
Yeah, so I know you heard my praises for your book. I cannot, talk about it enough. I mean, this is the type of book that I would just like to buy a box of and just stand on the corner and hand them out for free. Like,
Thank
people
you so
need to
much.
read this. Yeah, people. I mean, and the struggle of being a Christian, a lot of times we glamour it up. We make it seem like being a Christian is just, if you're doing it right, you're just floating through life and everything is fine. And then when people start having these bumps in the road, it's like, oh my goodness, what's happening? And a lot of the time what people do, they hide it. They hide what they're going through because they want to come across as this solid Christian that just loves God. And that's not what it's about. It's about truth. And your book says the truth. So the subtitle is the truth and nothing but the whole truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And you laid it all out. Like, you laid it all out. Like, it's really good. So before we go into your book, can you introduce yourself a little bit and let everybody know who you are?
Well, my name is Jay Burrows. The J is short for Julius Burrows. I am from Brooklyn, New York, born and raised. I was born and raised in Marcy Houses, well known for Jay-Z. We actually grew up together. I've been writing for over 16 years. This is my first novel, but I've written several full-length films. I've written stage plays, a couple of short films, and still working on more full-length films at the moment. I have some things coming out. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
I've also been walking with the Lord for about 16 years. Yeah. And it's interesting because what you said earlier, this is a question I always pose to people because it was posed to me. Had you known all the things that you were going to struggle with and the different things that you would come against you, would you have said yes? Would you still have said yes? If they
Look.
told you, a lot of us were told that it was going to be rosy, just choose Jesus, everything is going to be fine. And when you chose, all hell broke loose.
Yeah,
Reality
exactly.
came to you.
Yeah.
Like you said, with this book, for me, it was a book of necessity.
Mm.
I actually was praying for a way to make some extra money.
Okay.
And one of the things that the Spirit kept leading me to was like, they always say, if you can solve a problem, you can gain wealth.
Yeah.
Solve a problem. So
Mm.
I was like, well, what kind of problem can I solve? I'm looking around. I'm not an inventor. I didn't know how to do certain things, but I knew how to write. But I was like, okay, so what is the problem? The
Mm.
funny part about it is, what problem am I going to solve? And I'm on my computer at the time. I think I was on my phone at the time. And I'm searching pornography.
Mm.
And it hit me.
Oh,
And
wow.
this is the way people think that God speaks to you, like there's going to be this thunderous voice or something
Mm.
like that.
Mm.
He's very
Mm.
subtle about the way he speaks to you.
Mm.
And this was one of the ways he spoke to me. It's like that aha moment. And it's like the Lord sitting in the corner, like, okay, you're going to get it in a second. And I'm
Right.
like, oh, I got it.
Yeah.
That started this journey. And every day I would write a little bit as I'm going to work, as I'm traveling, doing different things. And I would write and write and write. and I kind of like it poured out of me, and it was healing to me at the same time. So I was able to confess everything that I was going through, the things that I had been hiding, and the things that were weighing heavy on me, the guilt, the shame. I got to pour it all out into the book.
Wow. Wow.
Everything came out in the book, and from the beginning, the Lord was like, "Just trust me, tell the truth."
Yeah.
So my testimony, my prayer was for it to be able to help others, because I know there are other people who are dealing with this kind of situation, whether in the church or out of the church.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I tried to address it from both standpoints.
Yeah, and that's something I really like too. But go ahead.
So with that, I of course back things up with scripture, and it was just my life journey. I took you back to the genesis of when it started for me, when I was about like 8 or 9 years old, all the way to the revelation of having the problem and being able to confess that I have the problem and finding a solution that worked for me. Because the biggest thing that I kept finding and running into was every time I would go to like the men's meetings at the church and things like that, everybody would point a finger at the problem, but no one gave any real solutions. You would hear things like, "You got to get out of the house," the idle time, which is very true. But there's a problem with that. Going outside into the world that we live in today, it could be more triggers than anything else.
Oh, wow.
We as men are very visual. So being visual creatures, you're seeing things past your eyesight. And here's the thing that I even mentioned in the book. When you see something, you cannot unsee. You can try to hide it all you want to, but you cannot unsee it. Once it's seen, it's there. Now you have to struggle with the seed that's been planted. You have to cast it out. You got to cast things down. And that's where I came up with, for me, praise music. Once I start doing praise music and I'm singing along and things like that, my mind is in a whole different focus. It's just like when you go to church, you start singing praise music to open you up to the word. Now, once I'm in that state of mind, I can read my Bible, I can pray, I can go into that. Whereas if it was just a thing, go out of the house, no, you can't do that.
That's not going to work. Yeah.
A lot of people will tell you, okay, you need to read your word.
Yeah.
The thing is, when your flesh has had a taste for something, you're going to war against yourself.
Right.
And your flesh is going, so you're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to read some Matthew today. And your flesh is going, no, we're not.
Right. Right.
We're going to watch this.
Right.
Not doing that.
Yeah.
And if you don't have anything to take you out of that frame of mind, then you're going to side with your flesh a lot.
Exactly.
And you're going to keep repeating the same cycle over and over and over. Now, when I first started, I put it to you like this. I was in a movie theater, and I'm sitting in the front row of that movie theater in front of a 40-foot screen. That's what pornography was when I first started this journey. Now, I'm in the same movie theater. I'm all the way in the back row, and it's about a 13 or 12-inch Zenith sitting in the front row. Down at the bottom. Is it there? Yes. But it's not as much of a struggle as it once was.
Exactly.
And it took time. It took patience. It took practice. I had to learn how to fast, pray, read the scriptures that are working for me, and also be around like-minded people that can help me. And we have conversations and things like that. There are weak moments. And, when you can't depend on the people who are immediately around you, you have to ask God, send somebody for me.
Yeah.
That accountability partner. And me writing this book, this is my accountability partner. Everybody who picks this up is my accountability partner.
Right. Wow. So let me give viewers a summary of the book. Again, I put the link in the comments. So if anybody's interested in purchasing the book for yourself, the link is there. It'll take you straight to Amazon. And please read, if you read that you buy it, you read it, please leave him a review. I can tell you from an author's point of view that reviews, we really need reviews for our stuff. So if you like it and you buy it, please make sure you go back to Amazon and leave a review for him. And so, as he said, the book kind of talks about his journey with porn. And one of the things that I like about it is, which he said, is how it started. Because a lot of times we get exposed to stuff very young, we're very naive. But that's how the enemy works, because he likes to plant seeds in us when we're most vulnerable. And then we actually are the one that ends up nurturing and watering that seed. And it becomes a big problem, and it can follow you throughout your life. And so that's another example that I like, because he shows how he got exposed to it as a kid. And then he shows how the problem kind of grew and followed him throughout his life. He showed problems where times where the issue was kind of small, it didn't bother him so much, but then the incidences where stress from life and things like that will bring it back, and how the problem grew. And so another interesting component to the story, let me say this really quickly. He talked about the problem from a child's perspective, from a single man's perspective, from a married man's perspective. And so it is really just amazing to be able to watch the progression of this, and then how God can just really save us from things that we can't save ourselves from. And we kind of get into, in the beginning, sometimes ignorantly, but then at some point we become complicit, and then we want to get out and we can't get out. And so that's when we have to kind of lean on God and ask him to help us. And then he shows kind of the process that you have to go through to get over that. Because again, we just like, okay, God, snap your fingers, make it go away. And that is not how it works most of the time. And most of the time, you got to put the work in. You have to understand yourself. You have to seek truth, because that's one of the main things that God uses. I always say about the Holy Spirit, one of the main things that the Holy Spirit does is just expose the truth to you, like just to teach you what the truth is. And that knowledge alone is very, very powerful and can help you overcome things, connect with God, and things like that. And so another unique part of the story is that he was a male exotic dancer for almost a decade. And so that component kind of comes in. And I mean, I just really, really, really love how honest you were. Because I mean, at some points it was almost like you wanted to close the book, like, like maybe I shouldn't be reading this, but yes. The truth needs to be known. Like, if we don't know the truth and people are not being honest about what they're going through, that's how we get these very erroneous ideas of what it means to walk out your Christianity or walk out your faith with God, because it's going to be sometimes through stuff like this and even worse stuff at times. So can you talk a little bit about well, let me ask you this, because when you talked about being exposed to it as a kid and kind of how it grew from there, I was also exposed to porn when I was a kid. It didn't necessarily grow into a huge problem, but I can definitely relate to you from that. You're just a kid. And then I saw, and when you talked about finding the books in the bag, how you knew you shouldn't be looking at it, but it was like, oh my goodness, I went through the same thing. Like, I found some dirty books in my neighbor's garage, and I was just so shocked, but I could not stop looking at it at the same time. But you don't realize what you're doing to your spirit as a child. Like, it's really kind of sad, but you don't realize it. And so I can relate to that. But I want to know, because like you didn't talk very much about your Christian influences when you were growing up. And so it almost seems like Christianity didn't really come into the picture until you were much older. But even when you start talking about it, once you got older, it seems that you had some kind of roots in it and some influence, because it doesn't seem like you didn't know about God at all. And you're saying, oh, I wonder who God is. So it seems like you kind of have some experience there. So what was your Christian influence and experiences growing up that led you to still, even go to God in the first place when you were ready to change and things like that?
What was interesting, my aunt and my grandmother played a big part in the Christian influence. They were churchgoers. I went to church as a kid with them. I would go every Easter Sunday, the holidays. We would go during the summertime, have camps inside the church. We went to one of those big churches where my aunt would take me, and we would run around all over the pulpit. We were kids. Mm-hmm. And those experiences were good. And I knew the church was like a safe place.
Okay.
Outside of home and everything. And you got to meet other people and play with other families, other kids from other families and things like that. but I didn't really know who God was.
Okay.
As a teenager, as I started coming up, my mother, she got saved in 1987 and changed her life around. So that was my reflection. I started to see more of who God was because I knew who she once was.
Okay.
And to see her do the 180 and become a different person right before my eyes, that was a great thing.
Okay.
But also,
wow.
At the same time, I experienced a lot of the backlash. You got on, my mother would be on the phone talking to people from the church about people from the church.
Yeah.
And it was like, so this is kind of iffy to me.
Yeah.
I started trying to seek God on my own. I've been through the 5% thing. I've been through the Islam thing. I've been through Egyptology, the Hotep thing. And, I got a balance. But the thing with that was all the stories started becoming the same.
Yeah.
It's just the moving parts where you would take away one name and put another.
Yeah.
It all kept saying the same thing. And my biggest question was, if this guy, Jesus, is not really the one, the Messiah, who he's supposed to be, and the Bible's saying he is, why does everybody keep coming against him? He's not coming against anybody else.
Yeah, or copying. Why does everybody keep copying?
So I kept going into that, and I started to get more of an understanding when I started reading the Bible for myself. And I found out that God was real when I was a kid. And this is a quick story. I did something wrong. I did a lot of things wrong, so I don't remember exactly what it was. My mother was hot, and she was like, when I come home, you go and get it. We all know what that means, growing up in a Black household, so it's coming. And she was really upset. Now, I had a Bible there, and I started reading it. And she walked past my room, and she looked in, and I was reading the Bible.
It's like,
for some reason, I was reading Psalms 23, and there was a peace over me. And I kept praying to God. I was like, God, I don't want to get beaten. I don't want to get beaten. I don't want to get beaten. And it was like this calm over me. And my mother kept saying, that Bible ain't going to help you. But she never beat me that day.
Right.
She didn't beat me. And she didn't bring it up anymore. She left it alone. So it kind of did. And that was like my first introduction. And then, like I said, I started seeking him for myself. The first time I heard God speak to me real quick was I got shot. There was a whole incident within the project, and a guy was getting chased by the police. Long story short, he was running towards the building, and they started firing at him. When they started firing, we all ran to the building.
Oh, wow.
And I heard a voice very calmly, very quiet in the midst of all this chaos say, go left. I didn't go left. Because I didn't have an understanding of what it was at the time. And they say God looks out for babies and fools. I wasn't a baby, but I was a fool.
Yeah.
I was a fool. So that was my first experience of hearing his voice and getting that understanding. My family had been going to church. I'm not going to say they were heavy into it, but they were going to church. More so my father's sister, my aunt. I would go with her. Then my mother started going to church. And like I said, I was skeptical because of the things I would see and hear.
Right.
And I started to notice, let me figure this out for myself. And that started my walk.
Yeah, that's really, really important because, and I wasn't even expecting you to say that, but I just want to, comment on that for a moment because a lot of people get lured away from God, Christianity. I don't even really like to put it in the bubble of Christianity because I think God is way bigger than that. Yes. And so it's basically about having a relationship with your creator. And once you do that, all the other stuff kind of falls in place and then, stuff like that. But a lot of people get lured away from God or pulled away from God or turned off from God because of other people, what they see other people doing, especially in the church. I've heard so many stories about people getting burned for being in the church. Even for myself as a kid, we grew up in church, but found out the pastor was sleeping with a lot of women in the church. And then from there, I don't remember going to church ever again as a kid. And so, but what's really important that you said, I do appreciate so much, is at some point you have to find out the truth for yourself. Like, it's understandable that, of course, God made us, intellectual beings, and one major part of our brain is that we absorb information, and and the brain was created to absorb information, and mostly his information. But because we live in a sinful world, we absorbing everything. So it's normal that if you see stuff and you hear stuff, you start to absorb it, and then our brain, like the magnificent computer that it is, it starts applying meaning to the things that we see and we're exposed to. And so we come out with the conclusion, well, something's wrong with Christianity because look at him, or something's wrong with Christianity because look at her, But at some point, you have to seek the truth for yourself. That's not going to be a good excuse when it's all said and done that you didn't find out for God for yourself because of other people. So I really, really like that story that, you were kind of, discouraged from it because what you saw, and you actually went to different religions trying to figure out things for yourself. And eventually you came back to, like, what, let me try to figure this what's really going on. And that's the key. I mean, that's really the key. You're always going to have things that pull you away from God and distract you from, having a relationship with him and even a deeper parts of yourself. But we all have the ability to seek truth, and we are accountable for that before God, whether we do it or not. So I really like that you said that. So thanks. We have Nanso here. Nanso is a kind of a surrogate son of mine. He talks about that he was exposed to porn at a very young age. He said mine was when I was 6 to 7 years of age. And then he says here that I felt when I gave my life to Christ, it would all stop. But immediately I got born again, I realized it became a serious problem to me. And I guess until a struggle, basically a struggle for him.
Yes.
And what's interesting about Nanso is that he's from Nigeria. So I've been knowing him for about 1.5 years now, and he's never been in the States. But it's just interesting that this is not a American problem. This is not a Black people's problem. Like, this problem can touch you wherever you are. Porn is everywhere. And even in, Nigeria, where I'm sure years ago, I'm not sure what the environment was, but you can still get exposed to porn, because I know in his country, it's not as accepted. Like what you're saying, like here in America, sexuality is, they use sexuality to sell products. It's everywhere. In his country, it's not like that. I've been to Nigeria before. My husband's actually from there. And so in Nigeria, you will have their scriptures on billboards and scriptures on back of buses. And you can definitely see the Christian presence there, especially in the areas where Christianity is the predominant religion. But even with that, he was still exposed to porn when he was 7 years old. And so, so I just wanted to add that. Is somebody else here? I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name. They said means, but I don't understand the question. So if you want to resubmit the question, and we can go ahead and try to answer that. If anybody has any questions during the process of the interview, please submit them, and I will read them to Mr. Jay Burrows, and then hopefully you can get an answer that will help you in your own struggle. So back to the book. So you talked about being exposed to when you were a kid, and then how big of a role do you think pornography played into your decision to go into being an exotic dancer? Because it seems like, again, you don't really go into a lot of detail about, you talk about the money and things like that, but do you think that being exposed to pornography or having that tendency, how did it connect or influence your decision to go into exotic dancing?
It didn't influence the decision to go in exotic dancing at all.
Okay.
The decision to go into exotic dancing was because I didn't want to be in the street anymore.
Okay.
I was in the street. I was involved in crime, and I knew exactly where that was headed, but I still wanted the money.
Okay.
And when I was presented with the opportunity to do it, I jumped at the chance, because that means, I don't have to look out from police anymore. I don't have to duck and dodge people. I don't have to worry about people trying to kill me. It was just one of those things. But you're leaving one evil to move into another.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't really understand that. I just was moving and feeling I was in a different direction where I was more of in a safe space.
Okay.
Now, while I was doing that, I became even more exposed to pornography.
Yeah.
I mentioned in the book different things that we had to go through as dancers, and then also the the availability to women.
Mm.
And I got to learn a lot of things with female nature from being exposed to that for the amount of time that I did. And that's where I came up and had an understanding where pornography affects you guys a lot different than it does us.
Mm.
See, with
Mm.
women, those little graphic novels that they read, like 50 Shades of Grey or the Zane novels and things like that, those ideas, or even just the regular romance novels, those fantasies stick into your heads. You're not as visual as we are, but you do fantasize about things. And when those fantasies stick in your heads, you may not act upon it until an opportunity arises. And the enemy is great with putting opportunities together to try to tempt you to do stuff that you know you have no business doing.
Mm.
So you may be living your life quietly, you have your family, your husband, and everything is good. And you stumble upon a flyer for a show, you come to a show, and you meet a guy like me.
Mm.
And I look like that same guy in your mind that you were reading about.
Mm.
And here's nothing but space and opportunity. This is a 1 in a million chance. This is never going to happen again. So it's put in your mind that this is never going to happen again. So I've seen women who jump so out of character. And, you know, it's that moment of regret or something like that. It can really destroy your life if it goes too far. Some women will say it's just a one-time thing. And I've seen women who've carried on full-blown 5-6 year relationships because of stuff like that. But it's hidden. It's something that's hidden. And sooner or later, that festering inside you, it's going to come out. You know, it's going to come out some way, some form, or some fashion. It's going to find it out. The enemy will not let you stay in the dark for long. He's going to bring you there. He'll keep you there for a while. Then he'll leave you. Then that light will be exposing on you. You know, now you sit to face it by yourself. Or so you know, if you don't have, you know, that spiritual backing or somebody around that's going to help you with it, this is what the trap is. And, you know, for us as men, we face this every day. Once we walk out the door, the challenge is right there all the time. And I don't think that a lot of men who are faithful, who are monogamous, get the credit that they deserve. In this society, it's pushed that this is how you're supposed to act. This is how you're supposed to be, you know, but you don't get the credit that you deserve because it's very difficult.
It's very difficult. Yeah.
Extremely difficult to do it.
Yeah. I actually have you a question about that, but I wanted to say something about something you said about women. Hold on, because I got so many thoughts in my head. I'm like, which one should I go to first? So you were talking about okay, so one quote that you have in the book when you're talking about women and how they have space and opportunity. One thing that you said in the book that I was just like, wow, you were saying that sometimes you get with these women and they say you brought the freak out in me and you used to feel proud about that. But then you realize that was just the lustful demonic spirit in you communing with the lustful spirit in them. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, wow, can you explain that a little bit?
So you ever heard of the thing, like the law of attraction says you attract what you are. So at that particular time, I was like steps away from being a porn star, period. Yeah. My movement, the way I was acting, the things that I would do. So when women would see me and my get up and my costume and things like that, this is something that they were already into. They just didn't have an outlet to express what they wanted to express. Okay. Or some of them did, and then they, you know, got right along with me. So it was already, you are the person you are when you show up. You didn't get this way. It always was in you. Right. And that was the thing that I talked about within the book as well. You know, it was just air and opportunity, you know, to become and to express more of what I already was doing and who I already was when I showed up. Now, the like spirits that are there, they are going to definitely, it's like a magnet. You're going to draw them all to you because they're like, you see something. You ever see something in somebody else that reminds you of yourself? It's the same thing. Yeah. That lustfulness is the same thing. It reminds you of you.
Mm.
You may not want to admit this, but
Mm.
yeah, this is
Mm.
you too.
Mm.
And when you see that, and it's like you're gravitating towards it. You're being pulled in. It's like, when a planet is pulling everything into its atmosphere, it's the same thing. We're all like that. And through nature, we are communicable people.
Mm.
So we make connections every day,
Right.
whether good or bad.
Mm.
This is how God works. He does things through connections.
Mm.
The enemy works the same way. He does
Mm.
things through connections. People are sent into your life, and it's not necessarily that they're being sent by God, but they're sent
Yeah.
into your life
Yeah.
with purpose. Whether they
Mm.
know it or you know it, it's still a design.
Yeah.
So we all have that thing where we gravitate and we magnetize. So when you change your life around, as I did, I'm not the same person. Like, people still look at me and they see me and they're like, "Oh, you used to be so and so." I'm like, yeah, used to be.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not that person anymore."
Mm.
And they're like, "Well, you don't do that no more." No. So everything that you were about to ask me or talk about is kind of shut down and it's out the window now. So now you're looking like, okay, well, I don't really have anything else to say. So
Right.
yeah, because now I'm not that person anymore. And you can clearly see it in me. People who have been around me, grew up with me, I don't proclaim it. They tell me. They're like, "Yo,
Mm.
you're not the same guy you used to be."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I know even for me, of course, God takes us all through transformation. And I think that's one of the key things in your book is the process of transformation. People say you don't act anything like you do. I'm like, I know, thank God. So,
Mm-hmm.
because I know I never would have been able to get this far on my own, to be honest with you. I knew who I wanted to be, and you do talk about that in the book as well. You might get to a point where it's like, okay, I want to be somebody different, but you don't know how to do it. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? And then when you try to step your foot in that direction and you keep falling back, then you feel like, well, I'm just stuck like this. Like, I don't even know how to do that. So I do think that your book really highlights the transforming part and how God really can take you who you are and where you are and get you to where you want to be, and you can't really do that on your own. So
No, you
but
can't.
one thing that I want to ask you about, because you talked about men who are faithful should get a little bit more credit than what they do. You talk about in your book that a woman plays a big role in whether her man is faithful or not. And so I wanted to ask you about this because I have always felt like if a man is going to cheat, he's going to cheat. It doesn't matter, because a lot of times women make it like their responsibility to make sure that their man doesn't cheat. And I understand that to a certain extent. Like, you can't be, denying your husband and walking around looking like Medusa. But I always felt like even if you do all of those things, even if you do everything, if he wants to cheat, he's going to cheat. And if a man doesn't want to cheat, it doesn't really matter if you don't do all those things, because he's doing that for himself. He's not going to. And so when you said what you said in the book, and I like to get things from men's perspective, so I'm not asking you this as like some type of trick question, because I think a lot of the times what men and women mess up on when it comes to each other is that we assume that we're the same, and we're not. Men think differently, women think differently. Like, we do have some differences. And when you just assume as women that men are just emotional and nurturing and stuff as we are, and then a man doesn't act that way towards you, you get upset. And then when a man is thinking that women should be just as logical and stuff as they are, when they don't, they get irritated with women or start thinking that they're stupid or whatever. It becomes a problem. We need to understand that we are wired differently and learn how to communicate with each other based on the differences in our wiring. And so I'm saying all that to say, I never thought that what you said. I felt like if a man is going to cheat, he's going to cheat. If he's not going to cheat, he's not going to cheat. So I would like your honest opinion, because I know you're really big on truth. How do you, because you said that it's like a woman plays a big part in that. And I'm like, really? She does? So can you help me understand that a little bit?
Okay. Think about it like this: assets and liability. If you're my woman at home and every day you're showing me how much of an asset you are, you cook, you clean, you take care of me, you give me the admiration that I need, you're pushing me forward to do all the things. Aside from you look good, you're taking care of yourself. You have me, you fill me with you, meaning we're intimate, beyond just sex. But there's an intimacy, there's a knowing that you know me. you know what I want before I even ask for it,
Mm.
because you took that amount of time to be that attentive to me.
Mm.
It's less likely that I'm going to go out and stray.
Mm.
Something may look good, but do you really need to deal with that because what I can lose over here? So
Mm.
now men think with logic.
Right.
As a boy, you run with what's ever available.
Mm.
That's still boyish mentality
Mm.
because you're not thinking logically of what you can lose. You're
Mm.
just thinking more about what you can gain.
Right.
Run around with a slot machine kind of theory where,
Mm.
I want to get this girl, that girl, and the third girl, so I could look good to my friends or whoever or impress myself. But
Mm.
when you have a woman in your corner that's really about you and helping you move to where you need to be, she's on programs, she's helping push you, you're Adam, she's Eve, she's really pushing you and
Mm.
helping get where you need to be, you know, that's an asset.
Mm.
And most people won't throw away assets.
Mm. Mm.
They're very slow to, Susie at the job may look cute and, she's trying to wear me down and everything, but I know my woman over here and I
Okay.
don't know what I'm getting over there.
Right.
I
Right.
could be walking into a world of trouble over there.
Mm. Mm.
So, it's less likely. Not saying that it's going to be a thing where a lot of men make different decisions.
Right.
But
Right.
again, as a man, you think with logic. And this is the
Mm.
difference between boys and men.
Mm.
You learn to think logical, whereas I need to know what is this cost.
Mm.
You don't build a house before you count the cost. You don't go to war before you do an inventory about your weaponry and who your soldiers are.
Right. Right.
So why would I leave something that I know is so good for me and has
Mm.
been good for me and good to me for so many years
Mm.
to go chase after something I have no idea about?
Mm.
It's just not smart. And when
Mm.
you've been through, as a man, been through sour relationships or situations where things have gone left, as I did, because when I was dancing, it still was that theory. I could run around and do what I want to do. It put
Mm.
me in some really bad spaces.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
had to sit back and think about this and be like, I don't want to keep putting my life on the line here,
Mm.
and whatever else I have at home, putting that in jeopardy.
Right.
That's not smart. And as a
Right.
man making a man decision, I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
what I mean.
Okay, I get it. All right. So I want to go because something that you said, which I think is really especially when you have kind of a worldly mentality or you don't know Christ or whatever, you really think that porn is harmless. And you talk about it in your book. It's just something you're gratifying yourself, it's just for enjoyment, it's human nature and things like that. And so I like how you kind of go into the actual damage that it causes. And then even you talk a little bit about it with women, how they get caught up in these fantasies, which, a lot of my books and my writing is geared towards women and us kind of addressing our own issues. And I can say from experience as a woman that is one of our biggest issues, is that we do kind of gravitate more towards fantasy than logic. And then we try to make that fantasy real, or we want to seek that fantasy out, and the devil will use that fantasy or help us create the fantasy, but use that fantasy to lure us. But and then you talk a little bit about, from a male's perspective, how it kind of affects you. But I want you to address like this idea that it's harmless, because you really go into how you had low self-esteem and you felt shame and how it affects your life in all these different ways. So can you talk about the harm of porn? Because it's very easy today. Like you said, it's everywhere. And it's becoming, sexuality in itself is becoming so diluted from what God intended to be, that it's very easy for people to think that it's not a big deal, especially if it makes you feel good. So can you talk a little bit about the harm that it actually causes us?
Well, the first harm it causes us is the shame and the guilt. You ever had a situation where you're out with some friends or something and you ask to borrow somebody's phone and they become super reluctant?
Mm.
Or, there's 100 passcodes you got to go through and all this stuff to get the phone even open. It's because the things that we're hiding. It's hold on, let me make sure my gallery's closed. I don't want certain things popping up on there. And being that you walk around with one of the most powerful computers in your pocket all day and it's so accessible, it makes it even more of a problem whether you're in the world or not in the world. It's just a prevalent problem. People don't look at it like that, but what pornography starts to do is because it makes you very, very selfish. It keeps you more in tune with yourself because it's a solo act. And you're putting yourself in a box. And the thing about it is, like I told you before, we're a community type of people. We're all human beings are based on community. We have to connect with each other to live, to survive. And the enemy cuts you off and puts you in isolation. Now you're getting this gratification, and it becomes a thing where you're watching one thing. And this is the thing I always told a lot of men who do dabble in pornography. No matter where you start off, you're going to end up somewhere totally different. And I've had this discussion with a lot of brothers. We have this barbershop talk. We talk about this. You may start off looking at one thing, but they're going to push you towards something totally that's out of your character. And then when you start making up reasons in your head for it's okay, it's just looking at it, you're wondering, how did you get here? Now, the thing about fantasy is sooner or later, you want it to become reality.
Exactly.
You want to move on some impulses. So no one's ever, and you can ask anybody who watches pornography, they're never going to tell you exactly how perverted they got. What is it exactly?
I think you did in your book, though. I think
I talked about it in my book. I talked about it because again, like I said, you can't unsee stuff.
Yeah.
Now, this may not have been the road. Like, this is what I'm typing in my search while I'm looking for this. No, but nonetheless, I still saw it.
Yeah.
And I can't unsee it now.
Yeah.
So if someone was to ask me, have you ever looked at this? I saw it.
Yeah.
But most people, you ask them that, no, I would never.
Yeah,
but it's the thing is, when those suggestion boxes and different pop-ups start coming up on there, you can't unsee that stuff. You could click on, close it out, or whatever. If you happen to click on it by accident, thinking it's one thing and it's something totally different, now you're already there. You entered that world, wherever that thing is going to take you. And this is what's so dangerous about these portals that we carry around with us all day. Whether it be a tablet, whether it be a phone, a computer, anything, it starts to dull your senses as well. So whatever relationship you were in, you're living partly in this fantasy. So now you're looking at your spouse to be part of that now. And you trying to draw them into your little filthy world.
Right.
And maybe they don't want to go there. The thing about it is pornography never says no. So your wife may be, I got a headache, I'm not feeling good. It's that time of the month. Pornography doesn't tell you no. It doesn't tell you no at all. It's always going to be there, readily available, whatever you're looking for, no matter what kind of thing you're looking for, it's there. And it's just up to you to walk through the doors. The doors are always going to be there. It's just up to you to open them. But now, reverting backwards, trying to get out of this stuff, it's hard, it's difficult because your flesh has a taste for it. And now that your flesh has a taste for it, it's going to war against you. And when I started to war against it and go through the struggles and everything, I would still indulge, but it was a different thing where I'm not getting excited by these things anymore.
Okay.
And it's like to the point where I'm sitting there in front of the screen, just scrolling, looking at stuff, and it's just like, why am I here again?
Right.
Wow. Like, okay, you know what? Let's just turn this off. Let's do something else. And it's gotten to that point where I don't even want to be bothered anymore. Because why even open the door for what? It doesn't make sense now. I'm not getting the gratification that I once was seeking, and it's not happening for me like that. So why be here? And this is what I try to express to a lot of other brothers who may be dealing with this. There comes a point in a time where you start running on autopilot. And that is the worst place to be in because you'll spend hours in front of a computer screen wasting time. Whereas what could you have been doing with that time?
Exactly.
Me being a creator, I understand how valuable my time was because I could have been writing a new story, a new script. Something else could have been created. As anybody else, you could have been doing something much more constructive with your time instead of wasting it.
Yeah.
Scrolling.
Yeah. Wow. Much more meaningful. You can spend time with your
Your
family, your
family, yes,
children. Yeah, it's a lot of
yes.
stuff. So yeah, that's a really good point. And that's one reason why sometimes I don't like Facebook because it's like it just sucks up your time. It's like I really could be doing something else. So you really have to kind of watch yourself. But that's a very, very good point. And God is all about meaning to me. Like it's we what a lot of times what it means to live in the flesh to me is to live void of meaning. So you're not really doing anything for any particularly deep or edifying purpose. You're just doing it basically just to feel good, and that's it. And so God is all about meaning. So if you're not using your time in a meaningful way, that can definitely conflict with where God wants you to go, because he's definitely going to want you to do something with meaning. So but I like that you talked about of course the shame. You have this shame that you carry around, which can interfere, and you talk about this in your book. It interferes in your relationships with other people. It interferes in your relationship with God. I know a lot of people, even in my circumstance, because we all come to God with shame to some degree. It stops you from really being vulnerable to God because you feel ashamed about the things that you've done and stuff like that. So shame could be a very, very powerful thing. And so I just want to highlight that. So because if anybody's watching that might feel like, oh, porn is harmless and things like that, I really want them to be able to walk away from this and understand that it's not harmless.
Yeah.
There are some effects that it has on your spirit and your mind that you may feel like is not that significant in the long run. But again, in your book, you talk about the fruit of stuff a lot. You have to see what kind of fruit it's giving you. And so walking around with shame interferes in your relationships. I'm sure as a parent, it interferes in your parenting, and it really stops you from connecting with God. I also like that you highlighted selfishness, which is to me is like a root of most sins is selfishness. You
Yes.
only being concerned about what you want, what you like, how you feel. And it's damaging. It's very, very damaging. And I just like your book so much because even in the process where you're telling your story, you just dropping all these little nuggets of wisdom throughout the story. And so you do talk about like the difference between life and death. Like, what does it mean when God talks about death? And in death is basically the absence of God. Like, and God
Absolutely.
is everything good. So if he wants you to be fruitful, he wants you to multiply, he wants you to grow, he wants you to learn, he wants you to love. Death is the opposite of that. You're not growing, you're dying. You're not advancing, you're decreasing. You're not, growing your relationship. Your relationships are breaking apart. And so death, that's what death is. And so I like that you talking about selfishness because selfishness opens the door to that death. Because if it's all about you, you can't nurture a relationship like that. And I can see somebody getting so caught up in porn or watching it all the time that you create these fantasies. Those fantasies have nothing to do with the other person that you envision in the fantasy. It's just about what you want, how you want to feel. You want to create this. And like you said, you just want to bring your partner in or whoever in on your little filthy thing. And people are more valuable than that. We're not just fixtures in a fantasy that you want to have. We're living, breathing, growing human beings. And so selfishness, I think, is another thing that should really be highlighted. But another thing is, which is again throughout your book, is the idea of, when you talk about you wanting to kind of get out of it and how it's a struggle, it's like you wire your brain. So I talk a lot about throughout my coaching and my books about the brain, because I think we miss that a lot. We, especially in Christianity, we can get so caught up in the spiritual side of it that we don't connect it to the natural side, and that God actually, everything here is a reflection of God. And so he gave us a mind, and our mind has to be wired. And when you watch porn and stuff like that all the time, and you indulge in these selfish behaviors and things like that, you are actually teaching yourself how to be like that. And however you're teaching yourself gets repeated and it gets deepened or amplified. And so you talked about you're never going to stay just where you are. So you might start off doing one thing, but once you're done, you're way over here and you're like, how did I get there? And it comes from you even beginning that process of wiring your brain to receive that stuff. And so we have to be very, very careful that we guard our hearts and our minds and stuff. Again, you talk about it in your book because it starts a process, and your process started as a kid. And that process, that brain wiring got to the point where you had a 30-year struggle now to stop doing something. And so I just want to point all those things out too, because at heart I am a teacher. And I want people to really walk away from this with some stuff that they can use if they have struggles of their own. And so, did you have anything you wanted to say about what I said or anything like that?
Renewing the mind is the most important thing. It's a daily process.
Yeah.
You have to renew your mind. Your frame of thinking will always bring life to your actions.
Yeah.
So if you think a certain kind of way, like when I was indulgent, I thought pornography was great, but now I know the truth about it. I think it's one of the worst things in the world, and it's a trap. It's just a trap, and I take it for what it is. So now I see it as a trap, and it's keeping me from doing what else. And I pose this question in the book: what is pornography keeping you from?
Exactly.
Now you can balance out and say, okay, you know what? Today, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
You know, they're keeping me from my children and enjoying them. Let's take them outside to the park. Let's just have a movie night with them. You know, is it keeping me from really being intimate with my spouse? Let me sit down and talk to my lady and have conversations and things like that. Is it keeping me away from friends and family? Let me make phone calls and check on everybody and see if they're all right. There are other things that you could and should be doing.
Yeah.
Other than idling your time there. You know, so it's always best to weigh the scales in your mind before you go and indulge in something like that. You know, if you
what is it costing you?
Yeah, there is always a cost. What are you sacrificing? Because life is about sacrifice. It's either sacrificing for the greater good or you're sacrificing for you, but you're sacrificing either way.
Yeah.
No matter what you're doing, you're sacrificing for an outcome. You know, if you want to pleasure yourself at that moment, you're going to sacrifice. You're going to have to give up something.
Yeah.
And I talked about the sacrifices that you're doing in the book.
Yeah.
You know, different things that you're giving up in the book. There's always a sacrifice.
Yeah.
But there's always hope too, because we serve such an awesome God that, you know, I'm never going to leave you because I'm part of you. We take you to some very dark places though.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's always him. You know, I prayed for it to just be over one day. You know, I don't want this anymore. But no, this is my wilderness. You have to go through. You're going to have to go through this process. For some people, it may stop tomorrow.
Right.
For those who it doesn't start tomorrow, don't get discouraged because it's your wilderness. It's all it is he's lining you up to have a greater outcome. He's reshaping you. There's something I have to do to you. I have to break you first, and then I'm going to rebuild you.
Exactly.
And when I bring you out of this wilderness, you're going to look back on all the stuff that you went through. There's your testimony. There's that thing that can help you help somebody else. And that's what the whole purpose of me writing this book was about. It wasn't just about me getting it out and going through it. Yes, I'm grateful, but it was that blessing to be able to say to somebody else who's struggling the same way I did with any kind of addiction.
Exactly.
Because they're pretty much all the same. It's just we choose different substances.
Exactly.
But these will help you walk through. You know, these words are encouraging. You know, I didn't have so much encouragement from other people. You know, but these are words of encouragement to tell you that you're not alone in this struggle, no matter what you're going through. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You can always turn around no matter where you are. You're not too far gone. The best thing about falling down is you're looking up. You're on your back and you're looking up. There's nowhere to go but up. So once you fall, there's nowhere to go. It's not about how many times you fall. It's how many times you keep getting up.
Exactly.
And it gets easier and easier every time. Just keep getting up. He understands your struggle.
Yeah,
you know, I understand your struggle because I've been there.
Yeah, and the whole process of like God going through these things with you, like what you're saying in your wilderness, is that you get to know God more in the process. And so if we did have those experiences where we really have to hold tight to him and go through these storms, I mean, that's where even between human and human relationships, where the meat of the relationship is when you go through things together and you come out of them on the other side and you guys have a different appreciation for each other, your strengths, your weaknesses, and things like that. It's the same thing with God. So he goes with us through these battles and he helps us and he encourages us when we fall down to get back up. And then you get to know him a little bit more. And then even in your story, you're telling people about your relationship with God and how he helped you. So not only how to get over this, but this is the type of God that we have, that he will walk with you through this. And it's not about you not being good enough or he's upset with you because you're doing this. Like, he's actually there to help you if you really want to be helped. But one thing is, two things I want to try to get to, because I know we run out of time. There's so many things that we could talk about from this book, but I could probably talk to you for another hour or two. But I kind of want to get to at least two more things before we wrap up. And one thing is that you talked about that how porn it comes from a deeper issue. I mean, like we talked about, everybody has different addictions, and I would even go so far as to call them idols. We all have these things that we shape our lives around and we make sacrifices for and things like that, and they become our idols. And we have to go through the process, especially when we go to God, of learning how to let those things go. And so, but I think what's really important, especially when you talk about the way your brain is wired and renewing your mind, it comes from a deeper place. And it's really important to understand that deeper place. That's a part of the process, to understand what is connected to in your mind that makes you desire that thing. And so for you, you talked about what was underneath for you was your relationship with your mother and your relationship with your father, how you had trust issues and things like that. So can you talk a little bit about, the deeper issues that play into people, not just with porn, of course, but getting into all these things that they think is kind of helping to relieve or overlook or handle those deeper issues that they might have?
Well, any addiction is always going to be a cover for something else.
Exactly.
Because you're trying to mask the pain. Now, me as a child, I grew up with my absentee father. He left when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And my mother was bitter against him. So she was very emotionless. So coming up, I wasn't getting the nurturing that I needed as a child. And, I came up in a rough environment in the first place. I was exposed to violence, sex, drugs, alcohol at a very young age. I grew up in that area.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where you see how bad life can be for you, but then when you go outside your door, you understand how life is even worse for someone else. And I looked at my life, and although I didn't have all the tools at the time, I still was able to navigate through. I was blessed that I wasn't exposed to, being molested or touched or anything like that. I was in a safe environment. It didn't look like the safest environment in the world because I grew up around addicts and alcoholics. But at the same time, there was something there that there was a hedge of protection around it. So going through those processes, we all see different things affect us in different ways. And we carry a burden with us. It's like a backpack being put on your back. And as you walk through life, you're collecting little things. You're collecting stuff. And you got a little bit of guilt. You got a little bit of shame. You're an introvert because nobody wanted to talk to you when you were little, stuff like that. These things. And then when we become older, they manifest in your character. And, some of us need to sit down with a therapist. Some of us need to be around people to let it go. It's being able to unpack that baggage and get it out and let it go. And being my relationship with the Lord and walking with him and understanding how Jesus really is in my life, it allowed me to release a lot of that stuff. When I was a young child, I was extremely violent. I had to go to therapy for that. And it was more because my father wasn't there.
Right.
You have a kid where I relate to a lot of these young guys now, because if you don't have a father, it's like Superman having all this power, but no one's telling him how to use it.
Wow. Wow.
Most of our young men are being brought up today. I was like that. I had all this power, all this strength, and didn't know how to use it. So with most of the time, I always told this to my daughters, that most women react with emotion. When men are filled with emotion, males, not saying men know how to control it, turn it on and off. But when males are filled with emotion and they don't know how to regulate it, they lash out and becomes violence.
Wow. Yeah.
This is why we have so many in prison or they're so willing to shoot each other or do things to each other with no thought.
Mm.
Because without a father teaching you, listen, it's easier to be humble. And I'm going to show you why. Because this is going to lead to this. Without that guidance, without a male figure showing you that, it's very difficult. Now, I had male figures around me. They weren't the best, but they were there.
Right.
So I didn't go to the extreme. I still was violent, but I wasn't to the extreme. You had to push me. Whereas with some other people that I grew up with, they weren't. And most of them are doing life in prison.
Exactly.
Or they're either dead. And I grew up around all of that. So that's the thing that I was expressing also in the book, where we have to, as human beings, figure out where we are and seek out the help that we need. We can't sit still and be shameful and say, well, I'm not asking anybody for anything. Shame and pride, they really hurt people. Pride, especially for men, it hurts people. You have to be, the first rule of being able to learn from another man is you have to humble yourself under that man. You have to be humble. To become a student, you have to be humble. And for me to accept Christ, I had to humble myself because I knew my life wasn't right. And I needed something else to help me get it right.
So I mean, like, and that's why I wanted to kind of bring this up, because, and again, you talk about in your book that God is not like, he thinks in absolutes, and he doesn't, and I did a post a little bit ago, I talked about God is not a coddler. Like, he's going to get to the root of the problem. He's not going to just do a surface thing and say, oh, it's okay, or I accept you however you are. He's like, no, I'm going to actually clean you up. It might hurt. It will hurt, but I'm going to actually fix you. And so it's really important that we, even with addictions, porn or whatever, that we get to the root of where that's coming from, because it's usually, like you said, something we didn't get as a child, something we experienced, some sort of pain that we're trying to cover up. And so it's really important, like you said, addictions on the surface are just a cover for something else, that we understand where that's coming from. Because I think in doing that, and sometimes it does take time to get to that, the root, in doing that, you loosen the power of the grip that thing has on you, because it's using your trauma or what you didn't get to hold you. And so once you deal with that and you address that, the grip of that becomes a little less tighter. So I wanted to address that. And I did a show a little while ago. Another guy I brought on talked about his book and how he grew up in a fatherless home and how it affected him as a man, and how he had to go back and make amends with his dad, which I told him was a great blessing, because a lot of people don't really even get the chance to do that. And his father was wanting to make amends too. And some people's fathers don't want to make amends. So,
Right.
And so I like that you brought that up as well, that, because that is a big issue, especially with a lot of young Black men. And they might, again, they make it seem like porn is just a very manly thing to do. It's normal and things like that. But you have to understand that it comes from something deeper that's missing, and that some hurt. So one other thing that I would like to get to is other stuff, but I have to pick wisely what I want to go into, because we're going to run out of time, is that I really like how you talked about you were struggling in the church. Like, people, again, they go to God, they think everything is going to be peachy, God's going to deliver them from everything, and you become a Christian, you might go to church every day, but you still struggle with stuff. And I really like how you showed that, again, with this whole the idea of outside the box. It's not the way you think it's going to be. Like, it doesn't just fall off because you accept God. Like, you actually have to renew your mind, or what I like to say is rewire your brain, because that is what God wants to do with you. He wants for you to unlearn those things that have become solidified in your thinking that now bring about the behaviors that you're doing. And so you have to go through that process. It's not a magic trick. It's a lot of times it's very, very difficult. But I like how you talked about being in the church, going to church every day, and then just watching porn the day before, or watching porn right after you get out the church. So can you speak to that a little bit about struggling while you're still in the church?
The struggle is real. Everybody goes through the struggle in the church.
Yeah.
Because you got to understand that you're going there for healing. So everyone is coming with a problem. When you're coming into the church, you're around like-minded people, and The whole thing is that you're communing with the Spirit of God.
Mm.
So now the Holy Spirit has to sort out everybody's problems.
Look,
And
how he does it, I don't know.
the great thing about it is the people that you're around are solutions to your problems, because he puts you with people who have gone down this road before. Now, with me, I had a problem with pornography, but I didn't have a problem with alcohol.
Okay.
So he may put me with an alcoholic because we have an addiction. Okay, so cool. This person has alcohol issues. I grew up around alcoholics, so I understand everything that he's going through.
Exactly.
Whereas pornography may not bother him at all. It's like,
yeah,
I'm going to leave it. I don't even be bothered.
right.
So now we're learning from each other. It's just like kids, you put them inside of a classroom, they start learning little things and behaviors from each other. You know, certain things they don't do at my house that you know, your parents don't like when you do it, but now you're starting to take on certain things. And when you come back home and you introduce it, you're like, okay, wow, where'd you learn that at? You know? So that's the same thing when you're in the house of God. It's not about the building, it's about the people. It's never been about the building. The building structure for we all can come into one particular place.
Right.
But church is within us as people. So now we commune with each other and you start learning things. But that's the thing about it. When you have an addiction or something like you're going through, hiding it, God wants you to expose it. He's putting you there to expose it for a purpose. I can't help you if you come into a doctor's office and I'm a doctor and you won't tell me what's wrong with you.
Right.
I
right.
can't do anything for you. What am I supposed to do? I can't do anything. I can't look at you and see what's wrong. You know? And this is the thing about when you're coming to church, things are ailing you and you connecting with certain people. There's a reason. God does not make mistakes. You know, he's a master planner. He always puts you with whatever you need. The thing is being able to believe in him and trust him. That's the biggest thing. And throughout my whole process of writing this book, that's the one thing I kept hearing from him. Trust me. Just trust me. Just trust me. And I always explained it to my friends who are not saved. They will go like, well, how do you do the church thing? How did you really want to get into it? I said, well, look at it like this. Jesus is that friend that calls you and says, yo, listen, I got you. When you go to the club, you don't need no money. I got you. Now, if I told you that, you believe me. They're like, yeah, you know, because you're my boy. We've been through some things. Same thing. My walk with Christ is because I've been through things with him.
Exactly.
He's been right there all the time. And all he kept doing is saying, trust me, I got you. And the more I let go of the wheel and stop trying to drive and just sit back and be a passenger, things work out.
Yeah, you're like,
I grab the wheel, something goes wrong.
Right.
Something goes wrong.
It's like you learn, like, oh wow, you do have me. Like, really, like you're not lying. You're not flaking on me. You actually do have my back in a way that I didn't even know I needed somebody to have my back. So, but wow. I just love it. And there's so much stuff in your book. Like, I feel like maybe I should have you back because I wanted to go into, which I thought was really. So I have, you know, my books. I have some books that I'm going to re-release very soon, and they're called God, Why Am I Not Married? 9 Reasons You Might Be Single. And one of the reasons goes into explaining the purpose of sex, why God created it, how we distort it and things like that. And one of them I talk about why women are more vulnerable in a sexual encounter than men. And you talked about it. You talked about women picking up on your nuances, like how you talk, the way you do stuff. And I just thought, like, wow. I mean, I would even like to have a conversation with you about that from a male's perspective, because I understand it, of course, from a female's perspective. And I really like to get a male's take on that. And so, but we can't go into that because I can talk about that for a long time. But that was really,
That's
really
for another show.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you guys really check out this book. And it's not just for if you have an addiction to porn. It's just to understand the process of healing and deliverance, and you know how God is really trying to make us into better people, how low we can get when we don't pay attention to that process or we abandon the process or whatever. I mean, it's just so inspiring and it's so deep and it's so real and it's so raw. Like, I just really, really, really love the book. I was so blessed by it. I have your website below, and people can go to your website. Can you let people know a little bit about what you have coming up. So I'll say really quickly that Jay Burrows has a movie coming out next month. I'm going to show a preview of that before we leave today. But let people know what you have coming up, what you're doing, where they can find out more information about you on your website, and what other kind of services you offer, because you are a motivational speaker as well.
So the website is pawns2kings.com. That's my main website. But you can also find me on social media at IG at Bullet or the Bible. I do every Wednesday at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. I do a segment called Truth Talk. It's about a 15-minute segment, various sometimes talk about topics from the book or just various life topics. I'm just trying to give hope to people. So I do that every Wednesday on IG Live at Bullet or the Bible. You can also contact me there. You can check me out on Facebook at Julius Burroughs. Also, like she said, I do films. I have a film coming out on February 24th. It's a premiere party that we're having in Newark, New Jersey at the Newark Theater for A Father's Pride, which is very near and dear to my heart. I wrote and that was my first co-directing debut on that one too.
Yeah. And so I'm going to show the preview here in a second, but I just wanted to say really quickly, which I told Jay before we started, I usually don't like Christian movies. I'll be honest. I'm definitely a movie person. I talked about that a little bit for a post that I did last week, because I talked about I didn't really like Matrix 4, but I love the Matrix, but I didn't like 4, and I kind of went into that. And in that, I kind of explained, like, I am a movie person. I'm a fan of sci-fi. I like doing reviews. I like dissecting movies and putting pieces together and things like that. And so watching movies is probably I would say probably one of my hobbies. And I don't like Christian movies because a lot of them are bad. And I feel like, if we're going to talk about God, if we can talk about aliens and robots and drama and garbage and make it look really good on the screen, and we got graphics, come on, Christians. Like, we can make the Christian movies look good too. But a lot of times there are some good ones, but most of the time they're not done very well. But this one, I was like, when I saw the preview, I'm like, wow, this really, really looks good. The acting in it looks superb, because that's another thing that I have a problem with sometimes when you get Christian movies, is that you can tell it's very, very low budget. The acting is not very well. Sometimes the storyline is, and so, but this looks really, really good. I'm very, very interested in it. So I will go ahead and show you guys the preview now. From a person, a self-proclaimed Christian who doesn't like Christian movies, I definitely think this one is this one is worth watching. So let me get that out really, really quickly. Okay, here we go. Come on, work for me, please. It's coming. Sometimes these, you know how computers are. I hope it works. I'm going to give it a minute. We can talk and while it's coming on, but
yeah,
it's kind of freezing now. Okay, I think it stopped. Let me start it over. Okay. Wow, he's like, God has a call in your life. You're like, well, I ain't answering. Like,
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, you guys make sure you go and support. Like, I am such a fan right now. Like, I like the movie, the book, your story. Like, I really, really love it. And I really hope that we can do some things together in the future. Is there any last things you want to say before we wrap up today?
Well, the book is available on Amazon, iTunes, Google, and BarnesandNobles.com. Also, it will be available on Audible soon. Working on that deal right now. Um, I'm going to turn this book into a movie. I'm
Oh,
working on the script for
absolutely.
this now,
Yeah.
so that's going to be another venture. If you're in the Newark area around February 24th, go to Eventbrite, grab a ticket, and come on through. You can meet me in person with all the rest of the cast. On IG, I'll be doing some live interviews with the cast, so you can check me out. IG at Bullet or the Bible. You can see me there.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Oh, I'd like this book into a movie would be, oh my goodness, it would be good. So I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for that. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you doing this. I feel so blessed because I just saw like I said, I saw your book and I always wanted to cover the topic and I just jumped on it. I did not expect the book to be as good as it was. It blessed me so much. And I'm
Thank
really,
you.
really encouraged
Thank
to
you.
see God is just amazing. Like he just really meets us where we
Yes.
are and helps us. And for him to, be using your book, I know, to reach people who are struggling in this area, probably most of the time in secret and not letting people know what's going on. I just feel really blessed and happy to just see how God works in so many different areas and stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's it. And you guys have a good day and tune in next Saturday at 12 p.m. for another episode of Outside the Box. My next show will be a relationship show. We'll be talking about right after this porn show. We're talking about sex and reasons why women don't really deny their husbands sometimes, why they're not in the mood, because that's like the stereotype. And so we'll go right into that. And then don't forget to tune in on Tuesdays at 12 p.m. for Testimony Tuesday and Thursday at 5 p.m. for a small Christian business highlight call about my father's business Thursday. So thank you so much. Talk to you soon. Goodbye.